Andy. And we are live on Let's Talk. Welcome, alienated parents, alienated grandparents, and alienated children, family, friends worldwide. Today, we are here on Let's Talk with Yulin May Markland from Toronto, Ontario. She has a very unique story to share with everyone out there. It's very touchy. So I'm going to let, once I introduce Andy Martens, he's going to ask Yulin some questions. But Yulin is from Toronto, Ontario, as I said, and she is an alienated mom, also a teacher that teaches grade 2, 3, and 5. Yulin had 4 children, 1 surviving children, and this story will break your heart. She has been in a relationship for 5.5 years with her partner who they never lived together. The relationship turned to Yulin being a person that was just there to make children for this man, to alienate her from her child. So I'm going to introduce you, Yulin May Markland from Toronto, and Andy Martens from the Sioux. We are in here in Ontario to talk about this worldwide. Thank you, Yulin. Can you give us a brief story on how this all happened?
Yes, thank you. Well, I had left Canada. I moved to the Dominican Republic, where I began and continued, I should say, my teaching career as an elementary school teacher in a trilingual language school, teaching grades 2, 3, and 5 for almost 4 years. During that time, I was held captive and I was bludgeoned about the head in the first few days that I was there with the family that I stayed with. And sure enough, within a year, I developed epilepsy. So when it was time to go back to Canada, I came back and I had a reality check of what life was like with epilepsy. I lived in a cocoon of a life, so I decided, I wanted to meet somebody. And I went on a dating site and I met a Black man who said he's from Jamaica and that he was marriage minded. I was just like, wow, that's unique. I've never really heard of that. I've never really experienced that before. So I thought that it would be a good idea to check him out. I had reservations about him from the beginning when he told me that he was separated. I said, no, no, no. Separated means married. So, right from the onset, I told him, hey, get your divorce, bring back the signed and sealed divorce decree. And when I know that you're truly available, then we'll start seeing one another. So I looked at the divorce decree maybe about 6 weeks later that he presented it to me. And I said, okay, let me give him a chance. But he started coming on strong right from the very beginning. Within a few days, he was asking to have children together. I was just like, no, slow down. I broke up with him. I said, I don't think that this is going to work. And, you know, about narcissism, he was able to keep on wooing me in. Then in time, going back to 2007, he convinced me to use a withdrawal method, right? At that time, we started dating each other in 2006. I said, okay, well, if he knows what he's doing, let me try it. Okay. But of course, that's always a risk. So sure enough, I did get pregnant. The first time I was fooled, shame on me. But then what happened? He continued always being on me. Can I put a bun in the oven? Did I tell you I wanted to put a bun in the oven? I mentioned I wanted to put a bun in the oven, right? So he was just kept on hounding me. Finally, he came one day and he was in tears. And I was just like, what's going on? He said that he had to admit that he was so desperate to impregnate me that he had been poking holes in the condom. Now, prior to this, he was saying things like, oh, you're getting big and fat. I had to think if he knew something that I did not know. I went to see my doctor, and sure enough, my doctor told me I was almost 4 months pregnant with twins, one which was ectopic. Now, that's very dangerous because that could have resulted in my death. And I was pregnant, didn't even realize I was pregnant, didn't have the folic acid that I needed, and things like that. I didn't want to have unhealthy children. And I wanted to have children at my will, not his. So we broke up yet again. So he came back again and, put the charm on. I do believe that he fits in the category of malignant narcissist. So he just was able to tell me that he was really sorry. It's just because he really loved me. He did the future faking with me, saying he had the house all set for me. He was going to give me a better life. He really wanted to be with me and that we could be happy together if I would just give him a try to do right by me. So I said, okay, let's see. But it got to the point where he was coming to my apartment saying, hey, I'm downstairs. I want to come in. Open up the door. I know where you live. I can kick the door in. And he would just force his way into my apartment. So I would just give in because I was terrified. I was in the fawn kind of stage and I didn't know what to do. I was torn because I was so terrified of him and I would just be in a state of perpetual fear and freeze. And I just said, you know what? If he's going to do what he's going to do, let him do what he's going to do. Finally, when I was due for surgery, I drew the line with him because he left me stranded at the hospital because he is extremely impatient. So he left me stranded at the hospital because it was taking me too long to get discharged from it. So here I was stuck coming off of anesthesia, had to call my niece to take me home. I was just like, wow, this is too much. And that's the thing is I said, you know what? I've had it with you. I've been too nice to you. I put up with so much and he can't treat me decently. I decided to use my final pregnancy test, and sure enough, it came back positive. And that was my biggest mistake, even telling him that I was pregnant, because once I broke up with him, that's when the harassing calls came. And it finally escalated to the point that he threatened to cut my then unborn child out of my stomach. Now, based on the recording that the police officers heard, he said step by step the knife, where it was, how he was going to do it. The police had to put an emergency restraining order in place for 18 months. It was at that point that I found out that he was really wearing a mask. This person had already gone to anger management 3 times, and he was being ordered to anger management. He had prior domestic violence convictions, and his probation officer, it was a 6 months probation. Even his probation officer called me. He said, listen, you need to stay as far away from this man as possible. Anger management is not doing anything to this man. I I beg you, please do not go back to this man. You are in dire situation.
Mm.
So, under the advice of my family members, I entered family court because I was told that it would be good in case he would flee with our child, seeing that's his biological child that I was pregnant with, that it would be good to get it on record that I am the custodial parent. And as well, if I ever planned on traveling with our daughter, it would be good to have those travel papers to make traveling, more easier, to make it
Mhm.
easier. Well, the person on the other end of the phone, she's like, "But ma'am, you're going into family court. Do you really want to do this? Family court. Are you sure you know what you're getting yourself into?" I was just like, oh my, I wonder something's going on here. She also made a point of mentioning that child support through the Family Responsibility Office would be mandatory. I was more interested in getting protection for my child, but she was saying that family court and Family Responsibilities Office function is to secure funds for a child because it's our child that is worthy of that money. And as I knew, money is going to be a problem. Money is
Mhm.
going to be the root of all evil. And that's where everything started. This person showed up to court and he didn't even come for the first appearances, thinking that because the restraining order was in effect, he thought that he still didn't even have to come to court. He stayed away from the court proceedings. So I got a default judgment in absentia. And what he did is when he first came up into courtroom, he said, Your Honor, I don't know this woman. I've never seen this woman before in my life. And before I knew it, the judge had asked me to bring evidence that I even knew the man. I had to bring in a shoebox, pictures, cards, text messages, even a hard copy picture, all of the things I had to bring in. Also, he had met my daughter. It was my family members that had been the go between. And here he is holding a picture of my daughter with baby's first Christmas bib. And he's
Oh,
denying
wow.
to know me. He's denying that he even knows of a baby, that I was pregnant, and nothing. And then he just turned things into, oh, he wants a DNA test. And there was even an issue with his name. The name that I saw in the divorce decree, I wrote down all the information, including the date of the issuance of the divorce decree, the name of his ex wife. I wanted to let him know I was going to be serious, right? And sure enough, he shows up in court and he uses a middle name. So then he accused me of saying, oh, I must have been having an affair on him. Same first name, same last name, but a different middle name. So that's when he's asking me to go through the indignity of having to undergo a DNA test, which of course was going to come back because it was his child. One thing that actually I wanted to point out as well, the reason why I went and I pursued criminal court against him, because when I spoke to my neurologist and I told her how my daughter was conceived, she said the fact that he said these words, one of the best things I loved about being with you is I knew I could treat you any way, anyhow, and because you have that epilepsy thing, no other man is going to want you. So that
Wow.
led me to believe that he just basically used me. He had told me prior to this he had tried to conceive with other women, but he did not want to have biracial children. He also
Jeez.
said that he wanted to raise children with a white woman because he couldn't really get along with black women. And I told him, well, then why are you making plans with me to have a home and everything like that? I'm not just going to be a drop by mom and things like that. That's what I was thinking. So it
That's
turns out he
unbelievable.
had,
Can I
yeah,
stop you for a minute? We're going to ask you a couple questions before you further go on
absolutely.
there. He has custody of your child
Yes, he
after all
does.
that. After all
Yeah,
that,
yes.
explain how he got the child.
What happened is after the DNA test and everything, once he saw his wages were being garnished, the first thing that he did is he went for full custody. That was denied. He went for shared custody. That was even denied. And then when he got offsite unsupervised visits, after having established 1 hour visits on site with the CAS, right? They wanted to see what type of father he was because he didn't know her, right? When he got off-site visits unsupervised, within 3 days, he was already sending me text messages, taunting me, saying he couldn't wait to retry for full sole custody because he was going to let our daughter know at every opportunity how much of a slut, bitch, whore, and elephant beast I am. Lo and
Un-
behold, my lawyer had to call in an emergency hearing. Back in those days, we got an emergency hearing within 3 days. And the judge had to stop the offsite visits because the judge can see how deeply disturbed that he is. So, what happened after that, he decided that he was going to stretch out trying to get the financial disclosure, right? To be able to determine what his true income was. Because I was not interested in his money, I just set child support at the minimal amount based on then a 30,000 income. However, when the Family Responsibility Office found out that his income was almost $90,000, seeing that he worked in construction, they wanted quadruple the amount of child support. So I felt that my case was just getting lost. Here, everyone is fighting about money that I don't even see at the time, and I'm still an ODSP recipient. I don't even get I don't even get child support. it gets deducted from my monthly allowance. So I don't care if he's ordered to pay $1, $2, or $3, or $400. I'm not going to benefit from it financially. And there I had the outside agency going and making me do the duty of having to review his T4 forms, to take a look at his bank statements for discrepancies. It's really out of my realm. I am not an accountant. I don't know about all these things. And although I was supported at times with legal aid lawyers only have a certain number of hours to be able to assist me. So once I was unrepresented, I found myself overwhelmed. So, in a conversation with my sister, who was then my best friend, I said to her, "Oh my goodness, family court is so stressful." Because throughout the whole time for the financial disclosure, it dragged out for approximately a year. Every
Mm.
time, every 3 months, he would have an excuse. He's out of ink. The printer's not working. It's missing pages. He couldn't get to the bank and get the full statements. He had an excuse, or simply he just did not show up at all. So I was just thinking, hey, what's going on? I have to get up so early in the morning, drop her daughter off at daycare, sit for court, not knowing, but expecting that he was not going to show up. It's a waste of my time. It's a waste of my energy. I want to get on with my life already. I want to have a child to raise, and there he is putting all these obstacles, and the judges just keep on adjourning, adjourning, adjourning. It seems like everyone was so accommodating towards him, but what about me? I wanted to go back to my life. So what
So,
happened?
did you regret going to family court?
Absolutely. I mean, I should have
So,
heeded the person saying, "Do you really know it's family court? Do you know what you're getting into?" Right? Are you
right.
sure about this? The tone
Yeah.
that she was saying, I'm just like, "Oh, I should have heeded her words. That should have been a red flag for
Yeah.
me right there." And my family members as well. It's so interesting in this whole thing is that my same family members are now buddies with this father of my child. In fact, in time after the apprehension, it was supposed to be a temporary apprehension pending an investigation and all of that. Unfortunately, what happened was when we were going to trial, as you know, trial only takes place twice a year, right? In
Mm-hmm.
May and in October, November, right? Then my father died. My father died in Jamaica. So I interrupted my trial because having been a survivor of domestic violence, having been a survivor of alienation from my father, I wanted to make sure that I could go back to Jamaica and lay my father to rest, knowing that the man that I feared the most in my life, I wanted to make sure that he was really dead. So I interrupted my trial. My own lawyer at the time, he told me that the best thing to do would be to give the father of my child, the same person who assaulted me to impregnate me, to give him temporary custody, right? Temporary custody. And the decision that was made was in the decision that was made was in without prejudice, meaning that I was still supposed to have a trial, right? So
Right.
the interruption, the lawyer said, take 1 year off. I also was awaiting brain surgery in August of 2017. So my lawyer said, this is not the good time right now for us to go ahead. Take a year off. I don't know why he said a year would be a good expected period of time when several weeks after my surgery, several weeks after my father's passing, I was good to go. So I was looking for my lawyer and I kept on calling him for about 9 months. Even had other people calling me only to find out that my own lawyer's father fell ill. My lawyer decided to close his practice, but he did not notify me. So, because of the length of time in which it was supposed to be 1 year, 1 year had already passed, and my daughter was in her father's care, which was supposed to be temporary. I'd also like to add the lawyer said that because no one was able to care for my daughter, that if I did not give her father temporary custody, the likelihood would be high that my daughter would ultimately be crown warded. So
Wow.
once he brought up the issue of adoption, I was just like, okay, I guess this is going to have to be an opportunity for him to get to know his daughter. The fact that my sisters were on my side then and would still be kind of facilitating the time and checking in on my daughter under his care. I thought that that would have been a good opportunity for them to bond because it had never been my intention to keep her dad away from her. The fact of the matter is, she didn't ask to be born. I was willing to work with him, but he was not willing to work with me. He made it clear that he wanted all or nothing. So during that time, I was supposed to get access to my daughter, right? The CAS, in the meantime, they had done their investigation. They deemed that it was bogus. They closed the file, but then they told me, okay, well, now you have to take it back to family court. Then I was getting lawyers that was saying that because the amount of time had passed, that it would be unlikely that I would be successful because my daughter was considered settled with her dad in Ajax. She had a
Wow.
school, she lived with her grandma, she lived with her maternal aunt and everything like that. They said that it was going to be unlikely that any judge was going to uproot her and put her back with me in Toronto. So I said, CAS, you're the ones who are responsible for this, right? They're telling me to go through the courts and fix the issue. If there was no issue, if there was no neglect, if there was no abuse, if there was no issue of mental illness and things like that, then I don't understand why they did not intercede on my behalf and made sure if their motto is reunifying children, why did they not try to reunify me with my daughter? Instead, they were throwing me back in the same system. It's also it disgusts me the fact that they even said that they were taking her because of stress. I never said that parenting was stressful. I said the family court process is
Mm-hmm.
stressful because the fact of the matter, it is. It's stressful for everybody. Judges, clerks, lawyers, parents, children. It is stressful. Do I not
It
have
is.
the right to express my opinion? Right? And
Yes,
they just
they
ran.
twist. Let me just get in there for a sec. Yes, they twist everything, and this is how false allegations fruition in the family court system. Andy, I'm going to get Andy to weigh in here. I mean, I think Andy is kind of blown away by all this too, because
Yeah,
Andy
this
knows.
is quite the story, Mary. I don't think since you and I have been doing shows for over 2 years, close to 3 years, we've really heard a situation like this. But you and I really don't know where to start. How did you meet this guy originally? Because it sounds as though, and we've been saying this time and time again, the plan was there to meet you quickly and all of that. It's so almost like a fool's game, meeting and all of that within, let's say, 3 months or less. So, how did that happen that you met him so quickly?
Well, I met him on an online dating app called
Well,
Dabble,
I was gonna.
right? And
It sounded like that.
yeah,
Yeah.
I was isolated in Canada, right? I was housebound trying to deal with the new diagnosis of epilepsy when I was living in the Dominican with the epilepsy, right? Um, wow. When I came to Canada, I thought, okay, now that I'm in Canada, I'm going to be able to live well. But I encountered so much discrimination. It completely affected my career. I didn't even feel comfortable going out. So I just said, okay, well, I need to have a little bit of TLC. And then if I could find a man that I could settle down with, I thought that that was going to be a better route. Continue with my career, although I was getting fired left, right, and center for having seizures. Anytime that I would have seizures, I would have to go to the HRTO and I would have to go and, file claims. I would have to file claims against the schools for wrongful dismissal. So I needed to have a little bit of a social life. I needed to have a little bit of joy and things like that. So when I found that there was a Black man that was interested in settling down, I was just like, wow, this is great. This is going to be a great opportunity. But it seems like you said, it was calculated right from the onset that his intent was just to use me, to use my womb, and for me to essentially operate as a surrogate mom, right? Because if he said that he didn't really want to live with a Black woman, and he showed me that all of his previous women were white women, so then maybe it was just a situation that he wanted to have a 100% pure Black child, but it was his intention just to walk away with my child. But that's
Can
when
I
he,
ask you how old this guy was when you met him?
well, let's do the mathematics. I'm 51 now, so this happened in 2006. If you could do the math for me, please. Maybe,
So you were
really?
46.
Yes,
Yeah.
thir-
Well,
38.
there's no doubt that that's the case. There was never an intention. You were fooled from day one, in my opinion, listening to your story. But this is why we've said time and time again over doing these shows that this is why people cheat. You want to cheat? You think the grass is greener on the other side? Well, here's an example. You meet somebody on a dating app. Here's a clear example how your life could be turned upside down, quite frankly. The dating apps are not where people should be. But you did it, and you had reason to. You had a tough going, like you say, with your epilepsy. But how do you put it all together with all that's happened? Living in Toronto, I was born and raised in Toronto. I've been in Sault Ste. Marie now half my life. How do you make it go in Toronto? I know how difficult it is. My daughter lives in Toronto. How do you make it go living there right now with all that you've been through?
It's extremely difficult, to be honest with you. I'm happy to say, though, that throughout the whole struggles, I was just Googling, like as an educator, right? I have access to many resources. So I was blessed and I put in all different kinds of combinations, and I found an organization called Community Action for Families, otherwise known as CAF. CAF is too close to CAS, but obviously there's a distinction, right? It is a group for women who have had their children wrongfully apprehended by the CAS. And a lot of the women that are part of this group are racialized and marginalized. And more, when I saw the operations of the CAS, I know that I was targeted as a Black woman. As you know, statistically, 40% of all Black children are apprehended by the CAS, although we are 8.1% of the population. And I've gone to conferences, I've met with the CEO, I even have a letter acknowledging overrepresentation of Blacks and Indigenous being wrongfully targeted. You know about the mother risk scandal, them apprehending children with tainted drug tests and things like that. The Children's Aid Society is morally corrupt, and
Mhm.
they are basically working at the capacity of child trafficking, as far as I'm concerned, because they get bonuses for apprehending children. They don't care if they're taking children from healthy homes and putting them into harm's way. At the end of the day, if they can get their bonuses, that seems to be their driving force.
What a crime. What a crime and what a shame for parents to lose their children to people like that. They don't even have children of their own, and they're doing this to their children. I know I went through it too. Millions out there are going through it. I mean, CAS will close a file on an abuser, but when it comes to a loving parent, they will keep that file open until you become the abuser in the eyes of the court system, which is not fair because the real abusers are sitting in front of the judges abusing. And so are these judges. When they allow an abuser and CAS to condemn a loving parent, you know where the corruption is.
Yes. And it's interesting because I knew that if you know about the angry Black woman syndrome, that I would have to go to court and keep it in check. So I went
Mhm.
to court and I was very demure. I was just keeping everything calm and everything. And the
Mhm.
judge was just like, how can you be so calm about it? This man did this to you. And I'm like, calm down, Your Honor. Like I had to even tell the judge to calm down because I knew that I could not respond in the way that the judge was responding. But
He
clearly,
wanted you.
the judge was on my side. The judge was on my side. And it's interesting that at the end of it all, when we're going through everything and the temporary decision, it was for a temporary agreement for 1 year, right? Contingent on going back and going through the trial that I never even had, right? The judge was even surprised because what happened? The father of my child could see that the judge was leaning on my side. He wrote a death threat to me to the courthouse addressed to the judge that said that
Wow.
if this woman ever approaches me, she will never live to see the light of day. And the judge saw the
Unbelievable.
letter. The judge
So
said,
what
not
what is
indicative of his
happening?
parenting abilities.
So what is happening to you today about that?
Well, what's happened is after that, for 2 years, I didn't see my daughter, although they were supposed to go to an access center. They called him for a 2 year period. He did not complete the intake. He did not allow any phone calls with my daughter. He became in a very close relationship with my own sister, who used to be my best friend. My sister was even giving, him weekends and all that stuff. Eventually, she did kick in and she did a kinship. I would like to backtrack a little bit, if I may say, is that although he had stopped showing up in the court process that was interrupted before, he did show up at the child protection hearing. Wow. So all of a sudden, the same person who had no say before and had no interest, he had a say as a biological father whether or not a kinship would be awarded to my sister. He thought that that was going to be slam dunk in his situation that, okay, now he's immediately going to get what he wanted, which was custody. So he said no to the kinship. And my daughter ended up in a foster home 3.5 years old with strangers for 6 months until that point when he agreed to do the kinship to my sister. And my sister then started sneaking him weekend unsupervised. So, in aligning with my sister, he started getting a better deal than what was being provided by the courts. My sister became
Crazy.
wrapped up with
That's
him.
wow. So how old is your daughter now?
She's 11.
She's
Now,
11.
yes. Now,
Wow.
what happened for 4 years, he did not even come to the court appearances. He had no shows. So all they kept on doing, even with lawyers on the case, they just kept on extending adjournment after adjournment, right? It's interesting because I ran into the goodwill of a duty counsel, and the duty counsel said, hey, what's going on here? At that time, I was unrepresented. She said that if he hadn't shown up already for the first time, that technically, if he didn't show up for the second, that I can fill out what's called a 14B form. That 14B form allows us to continue in absentia, meaning that because he was the one, he was being defiant and he was not going and following the court orders, we could proceed and we did not need his attendance. So then how is it that I had all the lawyers before and they let my case drag out? I think they let it drag out because they're milking the system. Because at the
That's
end of
right.
the day, they're going to get paid. So they don't care if it's going to be at the expense of my emotional distress. They don't care
That's
if it's
right.
going
So
to
let
be
me get in there again. This is why we urge parents not to go to family court. we advise everyone to basically think about what their situation is going to be, because if you have a vindictive partner, you are going to lose your child, because that vengeful partner will do everything in their power to suck up to the court, up to the judges, up to the lawyers, and make you look like you are the biggest piece of shit in the world, and you happen to be the most loving, caring human being that had that child and the best interest of the child the whole time. And the reason why we stayed with these abusers is because we had to protect our children. Because we know once the abusers take those children, we are doomed for life. And this is why people need to understand that family court is not there for you. They are not there for the child. They are there for the abusers to bring in revenue, children for profit. Now, this is known worldwide, and we are dealing with this. And we have to stop the court system to do this to us and the children, because that's mental abuse to the parent, to the child, to the grandparents, anybody else that loses access to the kids.
Exactly.
So,
Everything went haywire. I never expected that it would go in this direction, to the point that I would have to be trying to serve him with court process servers to bring him back into court. And even just the fact that I would have to go for legal aid, and I would have to apply for certificates in some instances, because they're saying that, oh, they didn't think I was really going to win. They were denying me the certificate. So then I would have to appeal. Then I would have to appeal the appeal. Of course, it's adding to the length of the case.
it's
And at that
prolonged.
point, because she moved to Ajax, right? Because her dad lives in Ajax. Now it was out of Toronto's jurisdiction. I would
Right.
like to also say that I did sue the CAS Toronto. I did sue them because I know that epilepsy was a factor. Epilepsy was looked at as a mental illness. And although the organization Epilepsy Toronto clearly explained to them it's a neurological condition, they offered to bring the staff in to educate CAS workers and things like that. They didn't want to have anything to deal with it. So they didn't know how to handle me in those moments where, I would have a seizure, I would blank out, they would be giving me instructions. I wouldn't be able to follow them because they were not skilled in epilepsy. They just looked at me as being an angry and violent and just some kind of deviant woman that had no business raising children. But they didn't realize that my seizures were not controlled properly because they were not being treated properly medically. And I'm happy to say that something positive came out of my father's death, because my lawyer as well pushed for my doctors. I went through 8 neurologists, and after seeing neurologist number 8, I had said all along, if somebody hits me in the head with the steel pipe, how's it going to help to take pills, right?
Right.
I'm pushing, open up the brain, fix the
Mhm.
damaged lesions of the brain. So I became a candidate for surgery. So I'm happy to say that in August 2017, when I did undergo the brain surgery, I only had 1 residual seizure, and October of 2017, and since then I have been seizure free.
Good for
Yes.
you.
So they cannot
Congratulations.
use the
I
excuse to say that I
yeah,
can't care for my child.
I went through that too. I ended up having an air gun blast in one of my ears, and I lost function and became I had a lot of epileptic episodes while I was driving. So I ended up being taken off the road for 18 months. And my ex-husband tried to use that against me as well, but he couldn't, because, it was, like you said, a brain neurological disorder and not a mental disorder. They try and use everything against us, no matter what we do, whether we're fit or not. But when
Yeah,
you do have a medical problem, they will literally play the field for that one. So, Andy,
exactly.
I'm going to get Andy to weigh in
Well,
here.
yeah, it's quite the situation. Wanted to ask you so the viewers understand from the time you met this guy, Eulin, how long was it until you got pregnant? Like, how quickly was the start of this relationship?
It was between 2006 and then the first pregnancy was 2007.
So,
within a year.
well, yeah. And the other question I had, did you ever consider an interracial relationship when you were looking and on online and stuff, or were you adamant with about meeting a black man?
No, I definitely wanted to give Black men, especially in our communities. The fact of the matter is, current statistics show that for every Black man, there are 6 Black women, right? And
Okay,
I'm actually a vocal advocate for anti-Black racism. So to be considering dating outside of my race, it would defy logic to do so because I am definitely very Black and proud and things like that. I'm actually a member of Black Lives Matter, and I am
right.
a member of the Nation of Islam as well. And there is no race mixing, so I certainly would not go back along that route.
But you realize that it was the wrong move that you made, but perhaps next time it will have a better
Well,
landing in your.
My own father, my background is Jamaican. I was actually born in Jamaica, though I came here when I was 6 months old, right? And my own father was quite typical, quite characteristically similar to the father of my child, right? And my own father said, Yulin, I don't want you to be with no Jamaican man. Even if I need to come back from my grave, don't you be with no Jamaican man. And this is the first Jamaican man I dated. And now I understand why, especially the fact that he was not raised here in Canadian society. I know that some Jamaican men can be a little bit scheming and things like that. And I guess I was a sitting duck, being the super empath that I am, to have fallen into the cracks of the situation, to fall and prey to him because, he just basically took advantage of my kindness.
Okay, we're getting close to the hour. We got about 10 minutes left that for this.
I can
Wow.
I can say that where we're at now, the pandemic was a blessing, right? Because
Right.
after him playing hide and seek for all these years, he could no longer use the pandemic, which he tried, as an excuse to keep my daughter away from me. He didn't want to even bring her to an access center because that wasn't an option. Everything was closed under lockdown. So I went and I found outside agencies in which we could play out of pocket and have offsite still supervised. But at the same time, I had enough wherewithal to research, well, how much longer do I have to do on site supervise, right? It's only for people who have drug issues, who have mental health illness, neglect, and things like that, people who have been disconnected from their children. So it didn't apply to me. So we were able to finally get him to agree to offsite unsupervised, but I knew that there was something suspicious about him agreeing because why would he just agree unless he's just agreeing for the sake of agreeing and he's caused havoc. Thus
Yes.
far, since the order was put in place on December 2nd of 2021, after we had our trial, which was a bomb because I had a newbie lawyer who lied. He told me he was a seasoned lawyer. I found out it was only his second trial. So he should not have even handled my complex case, right? So what happened is when I got offsite, week 1, he says he has to work. Then my daughter needs to get her hair done. She has a doctor's appointment. She needs to see that sister that I've had to cut off ties with. Every week he has an excuse. Even now, when I've calculated, I kept a spreadsheet because if you're going after a narcissist, you have to document everything. I kept a spreadsheet of all the times that he showed up, the times in which I had a police enforce clause. Yes, there's a police enforce clause that I knew enough to get in there that if he was not showing up, to call in the Toronto Police Services and get them to do their part to ensure the parenting time would take place. However, that same lawyer improperly worded the document, and it's just a little technicality, it's just a technical glitch that's in there, but the Toronto Police have not been trying to help me and step in and make sure that, except for maybe on one occasion where he refused to turn my daughter over to me, the officers, they took over and they actually drove me to a friend's house to ensure that I would see my daughter. But unfortunately, there's tension between myself and Toronto Police Services as a public speaker for social justice and change,
Yes.
in addition as being an educator. So right now, he's defaulted 77% of the time he has not brought my daughter. Most recently on
Okay.
Sunday,
All right.
he scolded me on Sunday too.
So, what is it? Are your visits like with your daughter when you do have her now?
It's magical. My daughter is, she is my twin. She is my other half, right? And
So she reciprocates the love with you?
absolutely,
Okay, good.
absolutely.
So
She
she
loves,
doesn't.
she's sneaky. She likes to, knock in the middle of the night. Mommy, can I just come in and I had a nightmare. I know it's just because
Oh,
she wants to be lovey-dovey with me.
yeah,
We
she
stay love
misses you.
holding hands. We hold hands everywhere we go. Everyone compliments me and saying, oh, you guys have such an ideal relationship, oh, you must be an educator, just the way that we bond and everything like that. She'll just
Hmm.
sit down on the train, rest her head on my shoulder. I know when she's getting a little bit tired. I'll just cuddle with her. We're nested together and things like that. And he can't handle it. You should
No,
see how she turns a spoon face when she knows it's going to be close to
time.
pickup time. She
Yeah,
completely changes. She
they
doesn't want to
do.
give me a hug in front of him. She doesn't want to give me a kiss. This is a child that was piggybacking on me 5 minutes before. But once she's looking at the clock, it's almost like she has an anxiety, knowing that
Hmm.
her dad's going to come here. There's going to be some drama. Oh my goodness. So she's already in the mindset that she needs to pretend that it's just like, okay, yeah, hi, mom, bye, and all that
Yeah,
kind of
that's
and that's not what
exactly.
she is.
Let me stop you there. That's exactly what these judges need to hear. The alienator hates it when the child is paying attention to us.
Hmm.
And once the child knows it's time to go, that's where, like you said, the anxiety happens. Their eyes get stone cold, they get fidgety. They know that they have to act like they had the worst time of their lives with you.
Exactly. And right now,
Yeah.
there's a motion to change in place. He didn't even show up. Now that he sees that I'm asking for the reversal, I have a great lawyer that's representing me. And he's also arguing the case based on systemic racism. He knows
Can
that
you
I
give
fall
us
into
your
the.
lawyer's name?
Yes, his name is oh my goodness, I'm just just so excited on the go right now. He is Stephen A. Cooper,
Okay.
and he
Can
is
I
in
can I
Apex.
share that with the viewers?
Yes, you can. And
Okay.
Stephen is great in the sense that he is very much in tune with what's happening in the Black community. He has seen cases like this before, and the fact that he would be willing to put it out there onto the judge, hey, Justice, not going to say the judge's name, you made a mistake, right? He's going to go back to the same judge who said that because I didn't want to have a relationship with my sister, the judge said, oh, so you cut your sister off so easily. How do I know that you're not going to cut your daughter off from her father too? You can't have custody back. Wow. What does one have to do with the other? My sister doesn't want to have a relationship with me. I can't force her to invite me to her home. She's been out of the picture. She lives in Burlington. I don't even see her. So the fact that the judge would make a decision based on my decision to have emotional peace. If I don't trust my sister because she testified on his behalf against me, why would I want to pursue a relationship with my sister? Isn't that my right to do so? So,
Hmm.
right now, the motion to change, my daughter says that she would like to live with me in Toronto. She's good with that as long as she can stay in her school in Ajax. So, I am willing to make the commute if I can fall within the postal code range and everything like that, even if I need to relocate a little bit closer to the school. I'm willing to
Hmm.
do whatever it takes to ensure that she's predominantly under my care as opposed to being under the wrath of her dad. Her dad right
Right.
now is in a precarious situation because his mom used to be the primary caregiver. She's moved back to Jamaica a month ago. They had a big blow up, and he has no one to take care of her but himself. She doesn't know at 11, she doesn't know how to tie her shoelaces, how to brush
Honey.
her teeth. She's walking into people on the street. She doesn't know how to spell my first name. She doesn't know her home phone number. All of these things, right? This is where mom comes into play. I have
Yes.
to
No
even make sure that
structure.
she doesn't end up with somebody like that. And she's being parentified, right? A lot of times
Right.
he's going and he's telling her all of the personal problems that he has.
Mm-hmm.
And I keep on telling her, just stay out of it. Just excuse yourself. Just tell your dad that you have some homework to do. Just tell him that your head's hurting, you're tired. Just, extract yourself from the situation. And most recently, this Sunday, I was at the Ajax GO train station. The pickup is supposed to be here in Toronto, right? Well, he lured me out to Ajax, and I was so happy to see my child. I just said, okay, let me suck it up already. He had been asking me for about 9 months to go out there, right? I had gone out 2 other times before, and I just said, something seems suspicious about this time. So what happens is he agreed because it was a PA day, I would get her for 3 days to make up for lost time. So I had her Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So the agreement was that he would drop her off at the Danforth GO on Friday, and I would take her back on the GO train. I went there with a friend, and sure enough, as we were exiting the elevator, he came charging out at me. He extended his arm, he punched me in my jaw, and he twisted my arm. And I was just like, whoa, he's not supposed to be walking underground in that tunnel area. Furthermore, he knows he's supposed to be waiting in the designated passenger waiting area. And throughout the day, he had been calling me saying, hey, I'm at Danforth. Where are you? I'm just thinking, okay, here we go again. He plays all these games, just feigning ignorance. He knows the agreement we made. There's no
Mm-hmm.
reason for me to have prepaid for tickets for myself and my friend traveling 7 subsidies over to be able to bring my daughter back. And he knew full along. He even said that he was waiting at Danforth, waiting for Toronto police with me, for me to come back. And I'm
He's
just like,
intimidating you.
yes. And I'm
Yeah.
not something to be intimidated because
No. And that's a
he
criminal offense to
and
intimidate.
it's extortion too, because he was saying
Yeah.
prior to this, he was saying that he would only bring her if I were to pay him for gas money there and back. And I told the
Wow.
Toronto police, I said, that's extortion. Why don't you charge him? And as well, the fact that he's calling and saying that I kidnapped my daughter, knowing full well that I have her in Ajax, I said, isn't that obstruction? He's using up the police resources. But because of the long-standing issues that I've had, the racism, I've been subject to police brutality myself because of the epilepsy, misunderstood. I stopped counting at about 8 OIPRD complaints that I filed against Toronto police for cocking guns to my head, putting me in hog ties, putting me in chokeholds, dislocating my shoulders,
Unbelievable.
beating me black and blue. So the Toronto police, this is collusion. This is collusion to keep my daughter away from me.
Yes.
Because they're
Yes.
in a position to step in and do something to ensure my visits. I spoke to
It's
Toronto
not
police.
just the Toronto police because they were
Durham
going
too.
to cuff me, but they couldn't because I had medical rest braces on, and they couldn't wrap it around me, so they
Hmm.
just hauled me into prison for no reason because
Exactly.
hearsay. And this is so wrong that women are getting abused by the police. Right
Hmm.
now, I am in another criminal assault as well. I got assaulted 2 weeks ago, or 3 weeks ago now. And, they only charged one. They didn't want to charge the other. Well, no,
Hmm.
it goes hand in hand. Get your
Hmm.
stories straight, get your acts together, and help the public. Don't be, helping the abusers. This is what's going on in this world because we can't even trust our own police who are supposed to help us.
And that's
But
exactly.
anyways, we're
That's
getting
where,
close to
you
the
know,
end of the show, and I'm gonna have to
Yeah.
get you, Andy, to give the last his last words to you because we can't go any further.
Yeah, we're gonna coming up. I think 4 or 5 minutes
Yeah.
before the top of the hour. We did start 5 minutes late. So, Ewan, after listening to your story, what would you do differently if you had to do this all over again?
I would not have even told him I was pregnant, to be honest with you. If he had been none the wiser that I had a child, then I wouldn't be in this predicament. I could have just gone on with my life. I would have stayed no contact and I would not have looked back.
Because I mean, it's clear you were never married. He never had an intention to stay with you long term. Because if he had, he would have built it a different way. This is like, sadly, most men in this world are like, well, maybe not as bad as your child's father, but they like to mislead people. Narcissistic, lying, conniving, promiscuous. Those are all characteristics. Do you know in 2023, Ewan, how many children or how many women this guy has impregnated? And how many children are there as a result of that?
My understanding is that he doesn't have other children. However, it's interesting that I won my CICB judgment, Criminal Injuries Compensation Board.
Good for
They
you.
proved that he manipulated me, right? I went and I used the York University classroom.
Without a doubt, yeah.
I won, and I won for pain and suffering as well because this is a violation to use someone to be a surrogate. I never asked for that. I'm not a drop in mom. I'm a full time on hands mom. And there he is shutting me out of her life. And it's even more insulting now that he has the nerve to be suing me and asking for child support. I mean, you forced a child upon me that I did not want. And now you want to make me pay for a child. So I was smarter than the lawyer. I knew enough to plead financial hardship because I'm not employed at this time. I've had to put my teaching career on hold, right? So that I can devote all my time to my case. And I told the lawyer, let's plead financial hardship so I don't have to pay any child support at all. But it continues to be about money. He's interested in getting the child tax benefit, but he says he
Hmm.
doesn't have gas money, right? He's interested in extracting all of the money, the legal abuse that's being inflicted upon me, right? It's taking away my employability now at 51 when I want to go back and resume. Now, because of COVID, because I'm anti vaccine, it's even forcing me. But guess what? It's leading me in the right direction because now I'm pursuing a career in law and security. I will be going to Trillium College starting on the 21st, and that will allow me to become a correctional facility worker, learn about non-violent de-escalation, work with people, right? Do a borders security, be a private investigator because if I'm working at that capacity anyways in dealing with a narcissist, I might as well get paid for it. If I've had to look into studying psychology and everything like that, it only makes sense that I would jump ship and be able to use my suffering and turn it into wisdom and turn it into something that will empower myself and hopefully guide other people who've fallen through the cracks and steer them down the wrong path to let them know if I can do it, they can do it too.
That's right. And you know what? Now that you mentioned, that's probably the same course I'm taking, to become part of the criminal code courts, uh, as a judge. I
Wow.
mean, there's so much for us to do out there, but right at this moment, I'm fighting identity theft because my narcissistic husband, ex husband, used my sin to put the children through college. And so I was denied.
Wow.
No, I wasn't that. I was denied my OSAP. I would have had to pay all it was over $20,000 in debt my kids used in my name in Toronto colleges. So
Mine
it's
is covered. Mine is covered. I only have to end up paying back $4,000 less than
Oh,
$4,000. So because
wow.
it's considered the second career and because
Right.
of the disabilities, they were willing to cover it back and all that stuff. I could easily put that on my credit card, get a
That's
job and be able to
amazing.
pay it off, right?
Yeah.
And with my income as well, comparable to that what I would be getting as a teacher, if I can start an income at 60,000, mind you, that's one he's going to want to come after me for
Oh,
more
for
child
sure.
support now. You better
Yeah.
believe it. Yes.
Yeah.
So it's in my
Exactly.
interest.
Yeah. So there is hope for us women out there. I mean, men are being manipulated too, because when alienation sets into a child, there is no gender difference, because they are conditioned to be who they are, become abusive by proxy. So these
Mm.
children are getting mates, the male and the female. They're all going to alienate the child no matter what. But when you get two alienated children together in a relationship, that's where the trouble is going to be serious, because one will manipulate the other, and the children, when they grow up in that kind of situation, become severely traumatized and could end up committing suicide, murder, school gunshot violence. It's endless what our children are going to be like in the next 10 years down the road. I've got Salvador Sino here. He said, must have a referendum, a vote now by the people to abolish family court corrupt system, which is true, and to hold all judges, lawyers, CAS, police, politicians accountable for atrocities committed to millions of children, parents, and grandparents. Where the hell is our democracy? People stand up, demand justice from your politicians. And that is so true. We've been knocking on doors to our politicians to be turned down. We even went to Doug Ford's office after letting him know that we were going to be there. We went as far as Karina Gould's office, one step below Trudeau, and we got denied there. We've been waiting for an answer. Oh my gosh, I think 8-9 months now. No, maybe not that long. I think it was after my trial, which was in September. So I think October or November we went to Karina Gould's office. We're not getting anywhere because they're all slamming doors in our faces, because they know we are right. They want the children to be damaged so that later on in life
Oh,
they wow, we
we
lost her.
lost her.
But anyways, to finish that sentence off, they want all children to be damaged down the road so that whenever they go missing, no one will care for them. No one will
Well,
look.
there's better days ahead, Mary, when the current mayor of Bonnie Crombie becomes Liberal leader and beats
Yes,
Doug Ford in 2026.
right?
You know, the Doug Ford's got to go. He doesn't care. He doesn't care about the drugs, all of that either. So,
No, he doesn't. They don't care about our children. They don't care about people. It's in general, like, to damage loving people and destroying all their inner souls to become an abuser is so wrong. I
that's
mean, isn't
right.
that we learned as a child, not to abuse, not to mouth back to
Oh,
parents
definitely.
or the police, or authority? There's nothing left anymore. Police are
Doug
getting
Ford
shot.
tells people who to vote for the mayor of Toronto. Well, Doug Ford's going to, he's going to be going crazy when Olivia Chow becomes the next mayor of Toronto. Oh, well, Doug, you can't tell people how to vote.
That's right. But let me just say thank you to Yulin May Markland. A remarkable story.
Oh,
We'll probably have her back for a second part to let us know how things are going, because this is a crazy situation. I mean, to get someone pregnated and then take the child, that's just a sick
well,
mental
I'm
mom.
sure it's happened before, but
Oh, yes.
only narcissists are capable of that, the
Yeah.
promiscuous nature. But I think that we've said this time and time again. People want to cheat. They think the grass is greener on the other side. They just, oh, he's a good looking. Oh, here she's trying to come back on.
Yeah. Well, she can just say goodbye. But go ahead, speak.
Yeah, so, I just, I'm not, I'm not signaling singling Yulin out, but oh, he's a good looking guy. Oh, he's a good looking lady. My point is if you base it on looks, and a lot of people do, men and women, you are going to be in for a shock. It might come back to bite you. You've got to get to know somebody and take the time. But these narcissists don't, because they know the longer it goes, the more you're going to get to know them. They want everything to happen in less than 3 months. That show on whatever, 90 Day Fiance. Watched it last year and in 2021. Well, there's an example, and
And
so this happens all the time.
he knew I had
That's right.
reservations from the beginning. He knew that I was vulnerable. I'm
Oh,
happy to
without a
say.
doubt, you were submissive, and you were the perfect target for this kind of thing.
And
That's
especially
right.
even now, I'm happy to say that because I've been 5.5 years seizure free, I'm back to myself again. This is
Good for
great.
you.
I didn't
Good
even
for
need the
you.
drugs. Those drugs are mind altering drugs that I was put on, the anti epileptic drugs. If the doctors had done the surgery from back in 2001, right, 2002, once it became apparent that I am having the seizures, then I wouldn't even be in this position in the first place. Had I not
That's
been
right.
asserting myself, then they cost me my child. So I also hold the medical community responsible because I fell through the cracks. It didn't matter that my neurologist wrote that having epilepsy doesn't preclude me from being a good parent. The judges have their own biases. And yes, race
That's
does
right.
play a factor. The fact that I'm a single black woman on ODSP, the judge is more likely to look at me as somebody who just wants to milk the system for the child benefit checks.
Yes.
No, I wouldn't have been hanging around for all these years completing all the paperwork that I've done through the court process unless I genuinely love my child. There
That's
isn't
right.
any mountain I wouldn't move for her. And the judge, it just seems he's already decided from the beginning that there's something about me that he doesn't like. I'd like to also mention the idea of Islamophobia. Right now, I'm wearing not this is not my hair though. I paid for it, so it's technically my hair. If I were wearing my hijab, it did not rub the judge the right way, right? Even when it came to separating and dividing holidays, I did say to judges that I don't believe in celebrating pagan holidays because that is not something that we observe in Islam, right? Well, the judge just thought, okay, well, I guess, he made it a racial issue. Then he's like, okay, well, I guess you don't need Christmas with your daughter. It doesn't preclude my daughter from celebrating me.
Oh,
So
wow.
if I had not worn the hijab, that's why I've decided that anytime that I go to court, I'm going to take off the hijab. I don't
Hmm.
want the judge to think that I'm going to be tied to Islam. And, even my ex, he keeps on saying things like, oh, now that, I'm in doing the work that I do in the Nation of Islam, oh, I must be a terrorist. We're the ones that, blew up the World Trade Center. It's dangerous for her to be around me. He has an excuse for everything. And the
Yep.
judges will also feed into it because there's a lot of misogyny in the court system. So the judges are going to look at me and think that I'm the angry, violent woman. The fact of the matter is, my case has slipped through, and I'm asking the judge to have an open mind. I don't want to have to go back to that same judge. It's not
That's
fair that I
right.
would have to reappear in front of that
No.
same judge.
But let me
So
just end
hopefully he
this. I gotta
Yeah, Mary, I've got
to
to
end
go.
this,
So
Yulin.
yeah.
I could talk forever, but there's a
Mm,
lot of disabled people out there who are suffering because they are being condemned because they are disabled, and that has nothing to do with a loving heart. And people like you and myself, I mean, I was in a wheelchair when I was falsely arrested. And so it just goes to show that they don't care. They're going to take the weakest person in the
yeah.
family and make them to be the abusive, unfit person in the eyes of the court. That's very unfair. But
And I
anyways,
tell them,
Yulin, thank
they
you.
don't want another mini me. They don't want another mini me. They see the
Well,
powerful woman that I am, so they
yeah,
want to oppress my people. And this is also
exactly.
the target. They don't want Black families to prosper.
Well, they don't want white families either. I mean, I'm white, and what I went through in 18 years, no human should go through that. You know, kicked to the
Exactly.
curb, living in shelters while he's living in the
Yeah.
mansion with fit, healthy adult children is wrong. But anyways, thank you so much, Yulin. Don't go away. I know we lost Andy, but that's okay. I'm going to end the podcast right here. Alienated parents, grandparents, alienated children worldwide out there, please don't give up on each other. We need you. You need us to grow healthy. We need you to have your own children, to be healthy, loving children instead of alienated, like, you know, what is going on for generations. I'm dealing with an ex-husband that was alienated for 63 years. This week will be his 64th birthday, to never have a father and never grow up to be a man, because he didn't know how to protect his own children. And every time he abused us, he left for 6 to 12 months and come back for a few days to repeat. That's what it
The
is.
same
It's
thing
all
happened to
about
me.
repeating abuse.
It happened to me when I was 17. My father said that when my mother developed epilepsy, he blamed us, the kids, for giving it to her.
Mm,
Before I
yeah.
knew it, he moved back to Jamaica for 28 years. I didn't see my mother. I didn't speak to my mother. It's only because he died in
Oh,
2017 that I was reunited with my mother. And now I'm working on rebuilding my relationship now that she's free of him, now that she's left that same domestic violence. That's why I'm so dedicated to breaking the generational curse with my
good
daughter,
for you.
because obviously I saw in him what I saw in my father. He was a replacement for my father.
Yes.
I thought that I could win over his love, but he will never change. He will get
No.
worse with age. And I don't want my daughter. That's why I keep up the fight, because I'll be damned if my daughter will be stuck with someone like him. So I have to let her know what abuse is, what
Yes.
boundaries are, to let
Yes. We
her
need
know
to teach.
that she is lovable and she should not have to settle with any man who's going to treat her with anything less than the best of respect.
Right. I pray for you and your daughter for more, you know, reunification, good stories. Yulin, thank you so much for, you know, coming on to Let's Talk on parent alienation and family domestic violence. It is real, folks. You're going to fall yourselves into a hole if you go near that family court system. Find an advocate. They're here to help you, not like the lawyers and all these fake therapists out there who are going to make
They're
your
helping
life more
themselves.
miserable.
They're helping themselves. They're making money
Your
off of our
money,
fight.
yes. Anybody that makes money off of your child, make sure you realize what they're doing. Anyways, thank you, parents worldwide. Thank you, Yulin, Andy Martens. We'll see you next time.
And you'll give me the link for this, right? The link will be sent to me.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Thank you,
Okay.
Patty. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. Goodbye.
Thank you.